Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson with HuskerBigRed.com, and back with me again, my co-host Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org. We're here to talk about the Rutgers game coming up, some Nebraska football, some recruiting, Mickey Joseph, everything. It's a Wednesday morning. Danny, 2 days away from game day. How you feeling about the Huskers?
I'm feeling great about the Huskers right now, and it's the first time in a while that I've actually been able to say that. I'm excited for Friday. I'm excited that I don't have to wait that extra day because, boy, do I want to see them back on the field after the win last week. And, I hope that they could pull it off. I mean, Friday night is weird for college football, but, hopefully Nebraska can get the job done.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity for Nebraska. A two-game win streak, is on the line in the Big Ten Conference. We have an opportunity to stay tied atop the Big Ten West with the six other teams that are in the mix right now. But Mark Whipple was talking about it yesterday, though. He said this team is capable of winning the Big Ten West, and frankly, I don't see why not, because the conference, looks like a mess right now, and we've always known that Nebraska has talent, and maybe finally, cutting Scott Frost loose and putting Mickey Joseph in charge and kind of having this program's back against the wall. Maybe that'll be the thing that finally gets it to sort of meet its potential this season.
And you heard Mark Whipple, say that they can win the Big Ten West, and I've heard previous regimes say they can win the Big Ten West before, but I never really felt confident with this particular group of Mickey Whipple and Bill Bush. Even I feel confident that's a realistic possibility.
At the very least, I like the fact that they know what's at stake, right? I mean, I don't know if Mark Whipple and the guys have to win the Big Ten West to keep their jobs, but that's the only guarantee, right? I mean, they know they at least have to get to some postseason play. I mean, Mark Whipple's been around coaching; he knows what's at stake here, and either he's going to be at Nebraska as part of Mickey Joseph's staff, or he's not going to be there, and that's going to be the case for almost every person on this staff. Maybe Bush would stay. Mickey, I'm hoping if he's not the head coach, he would stay, and Brian Applewhite. But for most of these guys, if Mickey and this team don't win the way that we all want them to, they're probably all going to be on the unemployment line, and that's a pretty big motivating factor in itself.
Absolutely. And you look at how open this Big Ten West is, and I think it works in their favor right now. I mean, you look at like we talked about on Monday, Wisconsin, firing Paul Chryst. You look at, this Rutgers game where they're hurt at the quarterback position. You look at, Michigan. I mean, they're a tough team, but I think it's a winnable game if we play on all cylinders, if we fire on all cylinders. So there's definitely an opportunity to pick up some ground here, and I feel like right now this team is in a good position and a good headspace to do so.
Yeah, I mean the schedule looks more manageable. I mean Wisconsin's always going to be tough, but that game's in Lincoln. We know we can play with Iowa. I mean, we just have to freaking beat Iowa, but we know we can play with those guys. So, maybe having Mickey is going to make a big difference there. That Michigan game is going to be the toughest one. That's I think, our only like ranked matchup on the road. But Minnesota's coming to Lincoln. Like these next couple of games, Illinois is coming to Lincoln. So there's of all the teams that I'm maybe probably the most worried about, the two teams that I would pick right now is like the favorite in the West. I would say Illinois and Minnesota. I think have been the most consistent. Both those teams are coming to Nebraska. So, there's definitely some opportunities here for this program, and you got to take advantage of it Friday night against Rutgers. I mean, this is a team that is probably starting its third string quarterback again. There's Noah Vedral maybe playing, but it's talking with the Rutgers guy who covers them. I mean, he played last week, but he wasn't able to throw, and Greg Schiano basically said he's only able to run right now. And so I don't see how you could go 1 week from not being able to throw and then starting quarterback the next. So I mean, we might see him. I think if there's any way he can play, he's going to be out there just because he obviously wants to play against Nebraska. But it's not, even if he does play, I don't think it's an ideal situation for Rutgers at quarterback, either way.
I was going to say, not being able to throw, but being able to run sounds like a couple of our backup quarterbacks over the past couple of years. But yeah, no, I think, Rutgers, because they are Rutgers and they are tough, we can't take them lightly. But I do think there's an opportunity to really kind of, build that win streak and um, you know, get the job done on the road. I mean, the road is never easy. Friday night, I mean, let's do it.
Yeah, and it's, you can really feel the momentum, and I think it's worth talking about before we break down, the keys and predictions to Rutgers is just the feel, how different it feels right now with Mickey Joseph in this program. I think if you polled Nebraska fans right now and just said, hey, do you want Mickey, like yes or no, Mickey Joseph as your head coach? I think the majority would say, yeah, they want him as the head coach. I mean, do you think I'm wrong in that?
No, I don't, and I'm kind of leaning that way too, especially if he can continue, to win and continue to recruit strongly. I know you had your big interview yesterday, Chris Schefter. I'm waiting for an autograph to come in the mail, but no, if he can land a guy, and I'm not saying he will or whatever, but if he can land Malachi Coleman, one player doesn't usually, make or break a head coaching opportunity. But if he can land Malachi Coleman, then that's another huge notch in Mickey Joseph's belt.
Yeah, and so I got the opportunity to talk to Malachi Coleman on Monday. We did a little interview and talked about, or Tuesday, I should say. Lord, I forgetting what day it is already, I guess. But anyways, I was able to catch up with him, and he didn't say a lot, but the things that he did say and the stuff that he kind of hinted at made me feel pretty good about where Nebraska is standing right now. And I think, all the experts from Rival or from 24/7 and On3 have basically picked Nebraska. Nebraska has a 99% chance right now, according to the On3 prediction machine. And the reason for that is because Coleman's visited Nebraska 10 times. He hasn't visited any other place more than once. And all those things are not always entirely accurate. So maybe missed like an official visit or something somewhere unofficial. But, he's only taken his official visit to Nebraska. And it just, to me, like if he was going to go to, a USC or a Miami, somewhere like that, he would have visited there more than once. I mean, kids just usually don't commit after one visit. You know what I mean? So I just feel like there's not a lot of time. He did say that a bunch of schools reached out to him about potential visits after the Miami thing. And I'm not surprised by that at all. But at the same time, Nebraska's been the constant. And, when he talked about Nebraska, I didn't ask him a ton about it. When he talked about Nebraska, he talked about it like he was already kind of part of the family. And I know his parents are obviously big Nebraska fans. He's from Omaha. So, he's probably a fan of the team too. And maybe that's part of the reason why. But it seems to me like his decision is kind of made. He's just kind of, waiting to see how things play out with Mickey. So another win, I don't think would hurt at all in this situation. Although I don't think it's going to be a make or break. I don't think Nebraska going 2-0 or 1. I don't think Nebraska's record over these next couple games is really going to, sway it one way or the other. I don't think Malachi Coleman's making his decision based off the Rutgers game. But I do think part of it is that he believes in what Mickey Joseph is doing right now.
And I think a lot of recruits believe in what Mickey Joseph is doing right now. I know he talked about this on this show a couple weeks ago, but Tyson Terry also really likes what
Mm-hmm.
Mickey Joseph brings to the table, and he's a top in-state recruit for 2025, I believe it is. So, I think a lot of recruits are in the wait and see mode, but I also think they are really, um, kind of encouraged by what Mickey Joseph is doing, and they see that he has the program headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a totally different attitude in the recruiting sense. I mean, that we've gotten a chance to really see how Mickey would run it, and it's so much better than what Scott was doing. I mean, it just was a travesty how Scott was running the recruiting department. So I think with Mickey, him running things and he really is an elite recruiter. I mean, we know that about the guy. He can recruit. That's not one of his weaknesses. So I mean, I think that landing Malachi Coleman is definitely going to be a big notch in his belt if he can make that happen. And if he can get a couple of wins and, if you can get a guy like that, I mean, that guy could literally be Randy Moss. I mean, he's 6'5", 190. I mean, he's got the kind of ability that we just haven't seen at Nebraska.
Randy Moss, that's some lofty that's a lofty comparison right there.
I mean, it is, but he's got the skill set, man. I mean, and just for Nebraska anyways, I'm not saying he's going to be that, that good, but I feel like he could be that kind of player for Nebraska. I just don't, I mean, in my all my years of following Nebraska football from the early 90s, I don't remember them ever having a receiver like that, and they've had some good ones, but they've never had a guy like Malachi Coleman that I can ever remember that you could just, you could talk about. I mean, Trey Palmer is really good, but he's not 6'5", you know what I mean? And so I just feel like he's a special player. And whether he's a receiver or a pass rusher, I mean, he's a damn good pass rusher too. So I just think he would be a huge get for this Nebraska program. And Mickey seems like he's really close to landing him. Hopefully we can come through. Like I said the other day, I would, if I had a crystal ball prediction, I'd put it in for Nebraska. I think that's the smart play right now, especially that we're 17 days away. I mean, that's not a lot of time.
I would too, and let's just say I'll be watching October 22nd very, very closely.
And it's interesting because that's a Saturday and Nebraska doesn't have a game that day. So it's like, people always kind of said, was that a reason for that? I should have asked him if he already had committed, like a silent commitment type thing, but I don't think he would have said it, but it would have been interesting to hear his answer. But, he's a really cool guy. I really am, I have to say this, I'm really disappointed by some of the Nebraska fans out there that are just trying to tear him down and, attack his character and stuff. I mean, for one, we don't know the kid, but I see him all the time signing autographs for little kids after the game. And, when he was talking to me, I asked him about his high school season, and he said that, he hasn't had quite as many opportunities, because he's getting triple teamed and stuff. But he said, I just want to win. If I can just be a decoy for my teammates, that's all I really care about. I just want to have success. And so I don't know what anybody that doesn't want Malachi Coleman. I think you're an idiot, and just stop talking crap about 18-year-old kids that you don't know anything about.
And you know who you are. We're not going to say names, but you damn well know who you are.
Yeah, you know who you
And,
are.
and I understand it gets you clicks, and I understand it gets you retweets and likes and engagement, but that's why you always see me stick to articles, not even recruiting rumors. Just let things play out and stop trying to bash high school kids. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, why would you want to do that? They're high school kids, and I understand. Like I said, it gets you clicks and it gets you engagement, it gets you followers, but cut that shit out.
Well, even, I mean, and I've seen the people in the message boards too, talking about like,
Message boards are
oh,
horrible.
yeah, suspensions. It's like, just shut up, man. You don't know what you're talking about. And I mean, just to some of the things that have been said, is, for one, why wouldn't you want a player like that from your own state at your program, for one thing? But at the same time, it's like, that's not going to make him want to come and play here. And really, for any fan base, not just Nebraska, but I mean, if a kid doesn't choose your school, like, the worst thing you can do is sit there and dog on, like, I mean, there's a million reasons why a kid is going to go where he wants to. It's his future, it's his dream. I mean, shit, just let him live his life. If he wants to come to Nebraska, awesome. That's good. That'll be awesome. I'm going to cheer for him. But even if he doesn't, good luck to wherever he goes. And because that's the thing, is you never know how things are going to play out. Maybe he goes somewhere else and doesn't like it and wants to come back, but the reaction was so bad that you know what I mean? So just let things play out, and find something better to do with your time than rip on high school kids.
And they see these things too. They really see these things. One retweet can get, the screenshot of the message board on their timeline. And, they really do see these things. And, there could be things going on behind the scenes that you have no idea about. So I think it's just better to let the situation play out and, not create so much drama. We've had enough drama over the past, I don't know, 10 years or so. Why create more? Why create more drama where there doesn't need to be any?
Exactly. Yeah, there doesn't need to be any drama with the situation. But yeah, and anybody that says they don't want Malachi Coleman, I think, is just a flat moron. I mean, he's one of the most talented players in the country. I don't see any attitude issues with him. I think he's a good guy, and I hope that that he's going to commit to Nebraska. I think that would be freaking huge, and that would be some big Mick energy right there. I'll just say that.
Absolutely, and it sounds like to your point, he's kind of more reserved and quiet, and that could often be misconstrued as having being standoffish or being mean. But to be quite honest, he probably just wants this stuff to be done with. He probably just wants this, to be all done. Enough speculation. He probably just wants to commit, and I could see, like we talked about on Monday too, and even just now, where he would want Mickey Joseph there October 22nd bye week. I could definitely see where that could line up in his favor, and he could make the announcement. If so, I'm going to be popping a bottle of champagne, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then I'm going to have my champagne, and then I'm going to be counting the days till signing day till he can actually sign. But because I
I'm going to
just
be
always
sweating bullets until signing day.
but he said Mickey's got this place in a good spot right now. This place, meaning Nebraska. So I don't know. You don't want to read too much into it, but there's a reason that no one's, I think, changed their picks right now. And after speaking with Malachi, I feel more confident than I did before that he's going to pick Nebraska. But we'll see. I think a win Friday would help. And so let's transition a little bit into Rutgers. I think a win would definitely help Mickey Joseph's head coaching candidacy, getting a win on the road, which, sheesh, we have not had since we went to Rutgers, I believe, in 2020. So we didn't win any road games last year. So yeah, it would be a huge step forward. I think Rutgers is 3-2 on the season. They've beaten Boston College and Temple and Wagner, but if you look at their stats, they haven't scored more than 23 points against any FBS team. So you're talking about the Nebraska defense. I feel like this is a pretty good matchup for the Huskers. But just kind of looking at Rutgers, Danny, getting into kind of keys and predictions. What are some of your keys this week for Nebraska against this Rutgers team?
Show up. I mean, looking at the stat sheet for
Yeah.
Rutgers, there isn't a whole lot to really kind of say, oh, we got to watch out. Um, you know, they have capable running backs in Samuel Brown. He has 2 touchdowns. Kyle Monagai has 2 touchdowns. Al-Shade Salam has 2 touchdowns. So they do have a little bit of a running attack, but their leading rusher, which is Brown, has 210 yards on the season. He does average 5.5 yards per carry, and he does have 42 attempts. So there is something there. I mean, I guess just defending the run, I think we're going to see a lot of the run game, especially since they're dealing with injuries at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and they really don't have, any type of dynamic running game. And I mean, they've got a couple backs averaging 5 yards a carry, but for the season, they're only averaging, 4.3 yards per attempt. And, if you figure in, Temple is not very good this year. And Boston College, I mean, but Boston College doesn't look great. Maybe they've got a little bit better.
Not really. I mean, they beat Louisville the other day, but I mean, they've had a rough go with things.
What I like, or not in what I like, but Rutgers is coached by Greg Schiano. They always have tough defenses. They play solid defense, and this team gives up 282 total yards per game, which looks pretty solid. But like I said, Iowa moved the ball pretty well against them. Well, not that well, but Iowa did have 2 defensive touchdowns that game. But they got up into the 20s. Ohio State scored 49 last week and ran all over them. They had a guy run for like 200 yards and 5 touchdowns. So I feel like this could be a good game for Anthony Grant. I know the Husker offensive line is always a question mark, but I feel like the running game is a huge key for Nebraska. I feel like Anthony Grant's got to get close to 100 yards to win this game. Do you agree?
I agree, but I also think that, they don't have too many impact playmakers defensively. So I feel like a guy like Trey Palmer, can really have another strong game. Palmer is undoubtedly the top receiving weapon for Nebraska. And I think if Nebraska really wants to open things up, I think they can. But even looking at Rutgers receiving, Aaron Cruikshank is their leader with 20 receptions for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. So there's really no big wide receiving threat either. I think this could be another good game for the secondary to continue to kind of get strong momentum moving forward after a strong performance against Indiana. And also, I think it's a chance where, Nebraska doesn't have to be on high alert for a dual threat, so to speak, so they can focus on stopping the run.
Yeah, and another, stopping the run is going to be huge, and I think that they're going to have a good chance to do that. And then the sacks. I mean, the sack production, and not just the sack production. There was 3 sacks, but I may be wrong on this, but I want to say there was 18 pressures. I want to say that I read about Nebraska from Pro Football Focus, somewhere in there, 16, 18, and that's what they've got to do. On Friday night, they've got to get pressure on the quarterback. And looking at the stats, Rutgers is actually. They're not great in terms of, sacks allowed. They're 10th in the Big Ten. So they've given up 10 sacks, this year. So basically 2 per game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but, when you're playing Temple and some of these other teams, those numbers can kind of add up pretty quickly. So I feel like it's going to be another chance for this pass rush. And Garrett Nelson and Caleb Tanner especially played their best games of the season last week. And, O'Shawn Mathis was fine. I didn't see, any special pass rushing numbers from him. I'm not saying he didn't play great, but those two really stepped up. And I think they have to carry that over to this Rutgers game.
Mathis has been excelling in the pressures area. You mentioned pressures, and he hasn't been getting the sacks or the things that show up on the statistics sheet, but he has been causing the opposing quarterbacks to get out of rhythm over the past couple of games, and I think that really counts for something too. I mean, I know he was kind of billed as a guy that can kind of take over for the Nebraska pass rush. But, I think he's really, kind of made his money, so to speak, in the fact that he's been able to pressure the quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, they just can't, if you give any quarterback in the Big Ten a lot of time, they're going to have enough players to get, to make things happen. I think that's one thing, I've learned over the years is this conference is really tough. And you look at, you could look at Rutgers and say, oh, Rutgers isn't a great team. Well, if you put Rutgers in like the MAC or something, they would win it. Like probably, this is a solid program, especially with Greg Schiano. And I think a big key for me is I believe Nebraska is going to be able to move the ball. It's taking advantage of those opportunities in the red zone. I've seen Greg Schiano teams, give up over 400 yards and only give up like 23 points because they held people to a bunch of field goals. So I don't want to see Tommy Bleekrode, in the red zone area. Nebraska's been pretty good at that. I think Anthony Grant's been a huge reason for it. But when they get their red zone opportunities, especially on the road, you have to take advantage of those and get touchdowns.
Absolutely, because it also gives confidence to the rest of the offensive unit. And, speaking of confidence to the offensive unit, I really want to see Casey Thompson play a complete game. And that's not to say that I'm questioning his effort or anything like that, but I think he really struggled last weekend against Indiana in terms of holding on to the ball a little bit too long. I know one of the things that was talked about was Mark Whipple's play calling and how it was bad in the first half against Indiana. But I think, his play calling was fine. I just think Casey Thompson was kind of holding on to the ball a little bit too long. And I could definitely understand it from his point of view because he had to worry about getting absolutely sandwiched on almost every other play. And I could see where it could kind of get into his head a little bit and kind of worry. But I just want to see a more complete game from him. Settle down, make easy throws, make the ones that you can make. Don't try to force things. And kind of selfishly, I'd love to see, 2 or 3 deep balls from him to Trey Palmer because, boy, that was fun to watch. He threw an absolute rocket to Palmer, and that kind of, I think, in my opinion, really got his confidence back on track Saturday. So if he can just continue to play that complete game and, kind of have a strong performance throughout the entirety of it, I think that should set up Nebraska for a victory.
Yeah, quarterback play always going to be huge. I mean, the team that gets the best quarterback play almost always wins. And Casey Thompson, I think his one issue that I would like to see him fix, and I would like to see Whipple is taking the easy completions, like what you were saying. There was a couple times last week he had guys underneath he could have thrown it, and he bombed it downfield. Now that did work out on the 3rd and 9, but that still was a 3rd and 9. He bombed it 70 yards. Like he does that sometimes. Hey, it works. It works out. I mean, if you have playmakers, they're not always going to play it safe. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have to live with that. But he does need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. And I think that his decision making, in some of those short routes, like dump the ball off to a back, throw it down to a tight end. Not every play has to be an explosive play, but moving the chains and also just keeping that positive momentum and throwing the football, because your offensive line isn't great. I mean, get rid of it. That's how. I mean, Drew Brees never played with a great offensive line in New Orleans. I mean, not that they were bad, but he was just damn good at getting rid of the ball. So he protected himself as well as anybody else protected him.
I was going to say, if nothing else, to protect himself, Thompson should just get rid of the ball a little bit quicker. And I'll say to this point on the offensive line, I am not encouraged by what I've seen from them so far. That unit I think is just a mess. It's still a mess. It's been a mess, and I just hope they can hold their own on Friday. Not that Rutgers has a prolific pass rush, but we can make anybody look like Dwight Freeney or I don't know
They got
Chandler
more.
Jones.
Yeah, they got more sacks than we do right now coming into this game. So, I mean, I do think that is a concern, and that's one area where Shiano has always done well as coaching, linebackers, D linemen. New Jersey, for some reason, seems to turn out a ton of good defensive recruits too. I'm not
Yep.
sure why, but so it's going to be interesting. It's a huge game for Rutgers too because they're trying to get to a bowl game. I mean, they went last year, but they were 5-7, so it was kind of like they only went because Wake Forest couldn't go or whatever the situation was. So this is a huge game for them. Talking to the guy who runs the Rutgers site, Scarlet Authority. Basically, there's he thinks this game might be sold out. He thinks there's going to be a lot of people there, and they're really viewing this as kind of like a measuring stick game. And I think there's a lot of pressure. While there's pressure on Nebraska to win it, I think there's also a lot of pressure on the Greg Schiano side of things. This is his third year. And, beating a team like Nebraska, I know Nebraska's not what they used to be, but for Rutgers, it's still a big win. Beating a team like Nebraska or Penn State or Iowa is a huge deal.
I love the fact that Nebraska is a measuring stick game for somebody else. That just warms my heart. But no, and I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be a fun game. Rutgers is going to be ready. They're going to be under the lights on Friday, like you just alluded to, a packed crowd. And I think as long as Nebraska continues to do what has worked so well, running the football, getting the ball to your playmakers, quick reads by Casey Thompson, then I think they have a chance to win this game. And on the defensive side of the football, I think they did a good job last weekend of just lining up and playing. No complicated schemes, no tricky formations. They just reacted to the football. And if they can keep that going and keep the defensive, game plan simple, then I think that they have a chance to really make an impact again. And 2 good weeks in a row for this defense, I think, would do wonders for their confidence.
Yeah, it is interesting, because I didn't see a ton. It's not like Bill Bush did anything magic, but I think Nebraska actually practiced tackling for 2 weeks. I mean, real tackling, not dummy tackling, not arm wrap tackling, like actual tackling. I mean, there's a difference between thud tackling, like just wrapping up and getting a dude to the ground, right? I mean, lots of people can wrap up Anthony Grant, but not everybody can get him to the ground. Like you have to practice that, and the tackling was much better. And that's just one of the things is you're not going to be a good tackler unless you do it. And the other thing is, and maybe it was a motivation factor of motivation. Maybe it was just thinking less, but like Colton Feast I thought played his best game of the year. Ty Robinson played his best game of the year. Luke Reimer, best game of the year. Heinrich, best game of the year. I mean, all of these guys, Garrett Nelson had his best game of the year. And so it's like, I don't know if that's scheme, if that's motivation, if that's, whatever it is, but if Bill Bush can keep getting those guys to produce, then I don't see why this team can't win, because we always thought that the defense was going to be pretty good at the start. That was one of the biggest surprises, that this defense just totally fell flat on its face, because the offense outside of the Oklahoma game has been consistent. And if we can get the defense to play like last week, I don't see why Nebraska can't go on a little run here, as long as they beat Rutgers and get some confidence, like you were saying.
Oh yeah, and I think one of the big themes going into the Indiana game was simplicity. And Saturday we saw, several players do what they do well. Ty Robinson was, a big disruptor in the backfield. Luke Reimer was an athletic linebacker flying all over the place, similar to what we saw in 2021. I mean, Colton Feast made some great tackles, and I know we were ragging on him for, quite a bit, but
Yeah.
it was good to see him
He shut us
have a
up this
strong
week.
game. He did, yeah. Ty Robinson shut us up
He
this week
did.
too, and
I loved
so
it.
I just love to see them kind of just not. I think they're thinking less, and I think
Yeah.
that's really bringing out the best attributes of each player. I mean, Reimer, he was a huge component last year because of games like he had on Saturday against Indiana. I'd love to see another strong game from him, Feast, and Robinson again because, I'm sure these players need confidence as well. I mean, it's been a rough year for a lot of these guys, so two strong games in a row could really do some good for them.
Yeah, Reimer, man, he looked like just totally different. Maybe there's been some injuries, I don't know, but he looked faster, and I think his recognition was part of it, and he looked comfortable. But Malcolm Herzog was really good at corner. I think he only gave up one completion. I know he got penalized, but two pass breakups, and he looked like a Bo Pelini era cornerback to me. Somebody who's going to get up in your face, get his hands on you and make plays on the ball. Now, sometimes do those guys get flagged? Sure, but I would way rather that than giving up 8 yards every single time on a pass completion. So he was one of the guys I felt really good about. Big Ten Freshman of the Year, which has been the first defensive player we've had do that in 5 years. So that was
Freshman of the week, not the
yeah,
year yet.
yeah, Freshman of the Week. Yeah, he's
Not the
gonna be
year yet, but he's
gonna
gonna
be
be
freshman
freshman
of
of the
the
year.
he's gonna be Freshman of the Year. That's what I
Now,
meant. Just
was
kidding.
that the Big Ten first Big Ten freshman of the week since Wandale Robinson?
Yep. Yeah. So that was, yes, he won it in 2019. And then another it was the first defensive freshman player of the week since 2017. So, I mean, that kind of shows that we haven't had a lot of impact freshmen in the Scott Frost era.
And also pinpoints to the lack of development or the
Yeah.
lack of recognition. So, I think I really like Hartzog. He's really aggressive. We saw that on the punt block for the touchdown, and I'm really excited to see his development because, you know, like I said before, I think I said this on Monday, but it's worth repeating again. We've lost guys over the years like DiCaprio Boodle, Lamar Jackson, and we've kind of scrambled to find impact players in the secondary. I think Hartzog can, kind of start that pipeline of, strong secondary players once again.
Yeah, him. And I know Jane Gould did get on the
Yeah.
field this week, but I still am really excited about, what he can bring. And, he might be somebody that can actually play he's somebody who could be in that nickel position. He's big enough to be a safety. He can be corner. He can tackle. He can cover. I think I think before the season's out, we're going to start seeing him, make some plays. And so those are two guys in the secondary, I think, that we can be excited about. And, that's a big deal for the Huskers moving forward.
And depending on how things go, they have Dwight Boodle coming in for 2023. So, I think there is going to be a couple of solid corners, coming up in these next couple of years. So the
And they're
future's looking bright.
And I feel like they're still working on the Ryan Robinson kid. I know we've talked about him a little bit, 3-star from Louisiana. Mickey's got some guys coming, man. Arnold Barnes, the third, a talented running back that's a little underrated right now. So, even if Nebraska loses some guys in their class, which I think I'm worried about Hayden Moore. And then I think did Van Poppel just get offered by somebody? Just got offered by Texas A&M, one of our
I
recruits.
think it was Van Poppel. I can't be sure, but I believe it was Van Poppel.
It was a kid from Texas, and I think we've got, so yeah, it might have been Van Poppel, which worries me, but Nebraska's going to have they're going to have some losses on the recruiting trail. That's just how it goes. But if you get Malachi and some of these other guys, I think it's going to be a net positive. I don't think that so far, at least, it hasn't hurt recruiting. I mean, I know we lost Lenhart, but that's, one decommitment so far. It's not that big a deal.
And had Scott Frost not been in the picture for Lenhart's recruitment, I think we probably would have still had him because I think Mickey really wanted him. But
Or Ashley Williams, it seems like Mickey wanted Ashley Williams and Scott was.
I
That
got
was
my
a
names
whole.
mixed up, but you're right, Ashley Williams, but probably Leonard too, to be completely honest here.
It's yeah, it's just a weird, it's just weird that they're like the quarterback, in 2024 we talked about, the number one quarterback, no
Zane
communication.
Flores, I believe it was his name.
He's in 2023. The other one, it's like Klein. I'll have to look up his name.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The 2024 kid, but no contact for a year until Mickey, contacted him after Scott was fired. And then you had the whole Dylan Raiola mess where Scott was supposed to meet with the Raiolas and got too drunk or whatever. It's just like, man, how can you not talk to these kids who are recruits? I mean, I just don't understand that, but at least we don't have to deal with any of that anymore. Now we got a guy that's competent and I think is doing a really good job. I was critical of Mickey, like I said that first week, but he did a good job last week, and I hopefully he can do that again because if he can keep this team playing like this and with that emotion and just not making mistakes, like I just don't. I think that Trev would hire him. I mean, I think that Trev. I think you could see, when he gave him that game ball, how much Trev loves Mickey.
Yeah, and how much the players love Mickey as well. I mean,
Yep.
we kind of talked about this earlier in the show. How much the recruits are really high on Mickey. The players are really high on Mickey. I mean, I honestly think if he can continue to build a strong foundation over the next couple of weeks, that it would be silly not to consider him as a potential candidate. And I understand, people say, that's one of the biggest knocks on him. People say, "Oh, he has no head coaching experience." Well, if he does pretty well here, he'll definitely earn some, in the future.
Yeah, and it's like, so what did Dave Aranda have head coaching experience before he went to Baylor? No. You know what I mean? Like you just at some point you have to take a
Ryan
chance
Day
on
over at
somebody.
Ohio
Yeah.
State, yeah.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh got his first head coaching job at the University of San Diego. You know what I mean? Like it happens. Dabo Sweeney had zero head coaching experience before he was elevated as interim head coach. So, it works out all the time. I mean, Lincoln Riley is maybe the best example of a guy that came in there. Nobody thought about him as the replacement for Bob Stoops, but he was the hotshot offensive coordinator. And now he's viewed as one of the elite head coaches in college football. And he had zero head coaching experience. I don't care about that, at all. I don't think I think experience helps, and I think Mickey, he said that it was more prepared the second game than the first game, but beyond that, I just think there's certain intangible things that you need from a head coach, right? And I think that Mickey, he has that ability to inspire players, to hold them accountable, and just to be a leader. Scott Frost was not a leader, and Mickey Joseph is a leader. But beyond that, he knows how to recruit and he knows how to coach, and I feel like he knows how to build a staff. So I feel like he's definitely in my top three right now for sure. I know he said he was like in your top three. I think Aranda, Leopold, and Mickey Joseph are like the three guys that I feel really good about. But if Mickey wins, I'm happy to just let that train roll into next season and beyond.
Yeah, that's my top three as well. And you mentioned having confidence in a guy that could build a staff. I mean, you even saw Mark Whipple get in Casey Thompson's face on Saturday night.
I love that.
Yeah, that was great, and it proved to work. So, I think we have something special here, and I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. But I do feel confident about the direction of this team going forward, and I think we could be in for some fun weeks as opposed to, a chore of watching Husker football. I think it's going to be more of a, at least edge of your seat, fun experience.
Yeah. It's you definitely can feel like the fan base, the state, everybody. You can feel more. There's an extra bounce in the step this week. So I really hope that continues. And so that seems like a good segue into our prediction part of the show, which is I know is always your favorite, Danny. You love throwing out the predictions. But I can't remember, what did you predict last week? Do you remember? Did you
I
pick
picked Indiana win.
Oh, you picked the Indiana one.
And
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
I can't remember yours, but yours is probably like Nebraska 98,000, Indiana 2 or something crazy.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It was I think I picked Nebraska 38-31 was what I did.
It all hinged on the defense for me, and hey, they showed up
Yeah.
last week, so they proved me wrong.
They did. I told a friend of mine just at the convenience store, he's asking me about, he likes to ask me about bets, and I said I don't know if I would bet Nebraska, but I said I would bet the over on the Nebraska Indiana game hard. And then I saw him like 2 days later, and he just shook his head at me. I was like, Nebraska's defense is better than I thought, man. I thought for sure that they would combine for 60 points, but oh well.
Nope. Nope.
But hey, I still got my win against the spread though. So I picked them by 7 and they were favored by 3. So I will count it. So I am now 1-4 this year against the spread.
I'm glad I'm glad I haven't bet on this Nebraska football team, because I probably would be out some money by now. So
yeah, I would. I think a lot of people would be. I mean, unless you're betting against them, but I'm too stupid to do that usually. But Anyway, so the spread has been 3 points so far. I don't know if it's probably changed a whole lot. That seems about right to me. If you think about if Nebraska was home, they'd probably be a 5 or 6 point favorite. So Danny, we'll go to you first. What's your prediction? The over under in this game, I believe, is 51.5 points. So people aren't seeing a super, high scoring affair, but that's the over under. Nebraska's favored by 3. What's your prediction for what happens Friday night?
Nebraska 31, Rutgers 17.
You're going for okay, gotcha. Nebraska 31. See, I have a pretty similar score, but I'm going to go Nebraska 24, Rutgers 17. I'm going to say that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think the defense. I think it's going to be. I can buy your score. That probably will be more of what it is. I just think that. I think Shiano and the defense are going to do a good job. Kind of holding Nebraska in the red zone. I think it's going to be kind of one of those games where they get a lot of points, or they get a lot of yards, but maybe not as many points as they should. But I do think that they're going to shut down. I think they're going to lead Rutgers like 24-10, or I think they're going to have a comfortable lead most of the way. I think Rutgers will get a touchdown late. Maybe we'll have to do like an onside kick type thing, but I think Nebraska's going to be in control for most of the way is my prediction.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can see this also being a case where Nebraska kind of wears down the Rutgers defense and in the first half, and then opens things up in the second half. I mean, they won 28-21 on that Friday night back in 2020. So, I mean, you never know. Granted, it's with all different people now, but it just goes to show that Rutgers can give Nebraska a game. I just think we have too many weapons offensively to really kind of put this game to bed.
Now you're making me question because you always pick the lower number, so I'm underestimating but Nebraska's offense. I mean, they're averaging well over 30 points a game, and Rutgers really hasn't played a very good offense outside of Ohio State. I mean, Iowa's offense sucks. Boston College offense has not been that great this year under I can't pronounce that guy's Jerkovich or whatever.
Phil Jerkovich, yeah.
Yeah, everybody he hasn't delivered so much this year.
The line has been awful, but yeah.
Yeah, and then
sounds familiar.
Wagner, they're the Northeast powerhouse of FCS football. So it's like that's the only team that Rutgers has scored over 20 points against, and so I mean, looking at that schedule, I think if Nebraska be 3-2 against that schedule, maybe even 4-1. I don't know, but I feel like Nebraska is the more talented team, and if as long as they don't turn the ball over, they probably will score 30 points. I'm probably cutting them short a little bit.
Well, I was looking at the stats from the last time in 2020, and it was a run fest. Mills had 191, 7.6 yards a carry, 25 carries. Martinez had 23 carries for 157 and 2 touchdowns. Wandale Robinson had a rushing touchdown, and let's see, Adrian Martinez, 24 at 28, 255 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions.
That probably was his one of his best games, even though he threw 2 picks.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat line because two of his incomplete passes were picks. So
I feel like looking back at that game, I feel like they just started horrible. Like
they did.
As bad. I feel like he threw one of those interceptions in the first quarter. So I feel like they got down like 10-zip or something. I might be wrong, but
the Rutgers scored Rutgers scored a field goal in the first quarter, and that was this only scoring for either side. Okay. Nebraska scored a touchdown in the second quarter, but Rutgers scored 11, and they were down 14-7 at halftime.
Okay.
Then Nebraska scored 14 in the third. Rutgers had 7, and then Nebraska scored 7 in the fourth and shut out Rutgers.
Huh.
It really was a weird game.
Yeah. And I remember it was like they were moving the ball, but they had turnovers it was just
it
typical
was like
Nebraska.
A lot of statistics for the running backs and the receivers, but no points on the scoreboard.
So hopefully we don't see that again Saturday night. Hopefully we're able to cash in on those points. So if you missed it, Danny's got 31-17. I've got Nebraska 24-17. That's our final predictions for this week. You have any other thoughts on this Rutgers matchup, Danny?
You said Saturday night, and just not to confuse everybody, it is Friday night.
Friday
So
night. I'm messing up. I don't know what day of the week it is, man.
Saturday night, hopefully everybody's relaxing after a win.
It's been one of those. It's been a long week. I've been riding the Nebraska high too much this week. Apparently, I don't know what day it is anymore. But
Let's
at
hope
any
that
rate,
happens more. Let's hope that
yeah,
happens more.
keep the train going. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode here on the Husker Big Red YouTube channel and our podcast. We'll have this, posted anywhere that you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Make sure you give us a rating too if you're checking out our podcast. We always appreciate that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Like this video, get into the comment section, tell us what you think. We love to interact with you guys, and follow us on Twitter as well. You can see Danny's handle there, and make sure you check out our content, huskerbigred.com, thegreatcornholio.org, some of the best Nebraska stuff that you're going to find. And guess what? It's absolutely free. You don't have to put in a credit card to pay for it. You get great content for free, so check it out. And as always, folks, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.